UVA Darden.
Good Disruption, a lively discussion between UVA Darden School of Business professors Yael Grushka-Cocaine and Mike Lennox on cutting-edge technologies and practices that are challenging the status quo.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Yael.
How's it going?
It's going well. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy Academic New Year.
Academic New Year. Yes, it feels like just yesterday we were at the end of last year. Where did the summer go? I don't know.
One of the things I love about being in higher ed is that periodicity that we have and how it ebbs and flows. And it literally is like a celebration this week. So this is our big launch week. All the students are back.
Students are back.
It's just awesome.
Yeah, it is. They fill us up with a lot of energy.
They do.
So I don't know if you've had any free time this week with launch week and everything else that's going around us, but I wonder, do you do grocery shopping at all? Do you go to
I do on occasion, but I do have to admit in our division of labor with my wife, she does do the vast majority of the grocery shopping, but I do it on occasion.
Okay, so I want to kind of weave in our topic of today that I'm curious to talk to you about, related to maybe stuff that you've seen on the magazines right by the checkout. When you're waiting to check out, maybe I don't know, some people are on their phone, but some people kind of read all the headlines of all the kind of magazines.
Yeah,
check
okay,
out.
yeah.
Have you noticed any kind of trends recently related to what people are reporting on?
Well,
what is on the top of mind of a lot of celebrities around us?
I mean, Taylor Swift, of course.
Yeah,
New albums coming out. I mean, this is exciting stuff.
You're good. You're on the ball. Yeah.
I suspect there's something else, though,
Yes.
if you have in mind.
Well, you may have noticed a lot of kind of before and after kind of figures, a lot of pictures, a lot of talk of who and who does not use Ozempic. For instance,
Ozempic.
Yes. Does that ring a bell? Have you been following some of that?
If you ever watch any social media or TV, you probably have burned into your cortex the Ozempic. So yes, I have heard of Ozempic, and I am aware of the trend, I guess you could call it. The fad. Is it a fad?
Yeah, it's a fad. Maybe it's a disruption. So what I would like to pose today, that we talk about the disruption that is the GLP-1s, okay? So all of the family of drugs that fall into that category.
Yeah, this is good for us because we always talk about how I think both Yael and I favor digital technology, AI, I like clean tech. Life sciences are incredibly important, have such a huge impact on our lives.
Yeah.
So we need to do these topics. So let's dig in.
Okay, so first, let's kind of understand what we're talking about. We're talking about a whole family of drugs, a specific kind of drug, that have been around actually for a while, it turns out. So initially developed in the 80s, approved for treatment for diabetes around 2005. And since 2014, so more than 10 years now, have been really used for also weight loss and weight control. Let's see if we can do the acronym. GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonists. That's a whole mouthful. I got that.
You attempted that, not me. That was really good. I'm happy I can even say it was Ozempic. So
there you go. There you go. Well, it's of that sort. Okay,
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you know about it. It's way there are different varieties and different types of drugs, but mostly right now what we're hearing are folks that are using either micro doses or larger doses, and they're using them through injection primarily.
Yeah, and I think this is important, thinking about it from like the economics of innovation here. This isn't just one drug that has a patent that's locked up this class.
Well, all patents have a limited.
They do. So Ozempic is out there. Wegovy, I know, is another one.
Yeah.
So are there going to be like a large number of competitors in this space?
Well, we know Eli Lilly is kind of active in that space. There are many pharmaceutical companies that are trying to own their own patent of variations of this drug, but also it is coming off patent. And what you're going to see is what we see with other drugs, that they become a lot more common once more companies can produce them.
Yeah. So generics might be coming to the market.
Might be coming to the market. So we'll talk more about that. So yes, the disruption, clearly there's a ramp up in terms of use. Okay. So I think even in 2023, there were predictions around 7% of adults will use it. And now we're already seeing it north of 12%. So it's increased pretty significantly, and it's ramped up. It's still pretty expensive, which I think we have to talk about in terms of a disruption. But I wanted to maybe step back a little bit and just understand what is it? Like, what does it do? Okay, like physically, what does it do? So I'm not a physician or a pharmacist. My dad was a chemist, and he will probably be embarrassed by my level of chemistry right now. But basically what it's trying to do, from my understanding, is regulate the blood sugar. Okay. And you can see how it relates to diabetes, type 2 diabetes, by the way, because it's trying to regulate the blood sugar. It's trying to it kind of has this effect that it slows the digestion. So what happens when you're slowing your digestion?
So suppressing your appetite. Right?
Yeah, you feel full. Yeah, you feel full. And so it suppresses your desire to either crave food or really eat a lot of food because you're feeling that you're full more often.
Yeah. You know, was this something that was being sought, or was this like a happy accident that happened, like some other drugs that, you know, have come along down the pipeline?
Yeah, well, from what I know from the research that we've done for this podcast, and maybe our expert will be able to tell us more, it's not a coincidence. I think historically, you know, obesity and diabetes are not often disconnected. There are related causes, and it just happens to be that a solution to type 2 diabetes, which goes directly to the blood sugar and kind of affects our entire digestive system, obviously has an impact on how we eat, and therefore how we consume food, and therefore how much we weigh, right? So like these things are related. So I don't think it's a total surprise or total happy coincidence. It's because there's already such a high link between the two of those things.
Do you know, in terms of the prescribing of it, it was originally intended for diabetes.
Yes, and that was the use case up front more often.
Yeah. And I think we all know in the popular culture, there are clearly people taking it who are not diabetic.
Yeah.
Is that, how do I say this? Is that legal? Is this allowed to be prescribed weight loss independent of any diabetes?
So that's where we are today, that it is being prescribed for not even cases of obesity, I would say, just anybody who wants to control their weight a little bit more carefully, and they could weigh, you know, they don't have to be defined as obese necessarily. Okay. So anybody who's struggling with their blood sugar or sees spikes or change in hormones or whatever it is, you will see some people prescribe this as a way to try to control some other bodily effects. Now, I will say that, like, before we even get to the general public, just the market, in terms of if we can improve the lives of those with type 2 diabetes and those who suffer from obesity, we are talking about a huge market. Okay, we're talking about 40% of adults in the United States are obese. We're talking about billions of people worldwide, and millions that would benefit in terms of the type 2 diabetes.
So this is certainly not a specialty drug. This is, you know, a very large total addressable market, as we like to say.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So the impact here is vast, and so you know, but I don't know that you and I would think about this as a disruption because we're so used to thinking about technology. So like, where's the technology here? Yeah.
Well, no, and I think, you know, a disruption can be in terms of people's lifestyles, in terms of consumption, and then of course we're always very interested in the competitive side and what does this mean, either for the drug companies, but maybe more broadly, spillovers to other industries.
Yes.
So what are we seeing in terms
And that's where it gets fascinating. Yeah, that's where it's getting really fascinating, because you asked, like, is this a drug that doctors would recommend or prescribe for just folks who want to, you know, control their weight in some way, shape, or form? Well, we're so used to doing that in other ways, right? Think of all the ways that we grew up thinking about our weight.
You run all the time.
I run all the time. Now I run for a variety of reasons, but part of that I run in order to kind of keep my weight where I want it to be, but or to keep fit and to feel like I can control my weight at least. We have certain eating habits, certain exercise habits, and all of that is up in the air in terms of like what could be affected by this drug, and as it becomes more and more popular.
Yeah. I could imagine, you know, ones like health and fitness, you know, whether it's a gym that you go to or an application that you use, like a Peloton. I mean, are they being impacted by this?
Slowly and surely they are. You're seeing people move towards more weightlifting and using weights because there are some concerns around how the muscles are going to behave under these drugs. So we'll come back to the side effects and some of the downsides of the drugs in a moment. But folks are moving away from cardio and pure kind of exercise for weight losing. They're going into more dedicated
well, I know you want to talk about the risk here, but just put this one out there. So there is this fear that use of the drug actually causes loss of muscle mass. Is that right?
Yeah. Well,
so it causes you to lose weight, but it also you lose muscle.
Some effects like that. And so we have to think about how to maintain our body when our habits are changing in such a drastic way.
Yeah.
But you know, talking about other industries that are affected, the ones that you mentioned, like the exercise industry, I would say, or the health and fitness industry, but it has side effects that affect, meaning other industries that are affected, like restaurants and the types of portions that they serve. And maybe this is an opportunity for them to be leaner and not serve as much food if folks aren't that hungry. So why waste all that food?
Now, I would imagine something like this reduces your kind of total caloric count. It doesn't say anything about the healthiness of what you eat, right? So you might choose to use your limited caloric intake to eat potato chips if you want, or you could eat, some vegetables.
It's a great question. What does a healthy diet look like? And so an organization, maybe historically like Weight Watchers, that used to help folks like count calories and monitoring, their whole set of prescriptions and how they interact with their audience and their members is very different now, because they are one of the organizations that has fully embraced these GLP-1s. And so they're approaching the process of weight reduction with their members in a very different way.
So a question that we haven't discussed yet: when you take this drug, it helps you lose your weight. Do you ever get off the drug? And if so, what are the impacts of that?
Great question. I think this is a good time. I think we've reached the limit of my knowledge. I think maybe I can come up with some tidbits as we go along, but I think this is a great time to bring our guest. Do you feel the same?
As always with us, it's great to bring in our expert.
Well, I am super excited because our guest today is one of my favorite people, Dr. Sandhya Chhabra. I know that this is a podcast, so folks can't see it, but I see your smile, and I'm excited to embarrass you a little bit because so accomplished and so knowledgeable in this space. We couldn't have asked for a better expert, a physician, entrepreneur, and a Darden alumni.
Wonderful.
And she's an alumni board member. Her specialties are in type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So really up this kind of main theme alley. Thyroid disorders and more. And she's also well-versed in medical practice, operations, and healthcare consultants. She currently serves as a senior medical advisor for Springbok Analytics, a cutting-edge healthcare technology company. And I know from previous panels that we've been on together that she is a passionate foodie. So she appreciates food, which might come into handy in this conversation. An avid worldwide traveler, and she chooses her journeys based on culinary experiences. Sandhya, thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to have your input and your knowledge.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Maybe we can start with Mike's last question to me, which I'm not as familiar with the answer and not sure of the answer around. Do people stop using these drugs? Is there a point where GLP-1s are no longer consumed? And what does that do to folks that were using it previously?
Yeah, so like all answers to complicated questions, I'll start with it depends. So in an ideal, in an ideal scenario, we use GLP-1s in individuals who are well. So for starters, when they're used for type 2 diabetes, they're generally not stopped. The intention is to use them indefinitely. But since the issue that we're discussing here today more is obesity and weight loss. The agenda or the plan and the hope is that we teach people how to have the right kinds of behaviors and consume food in a manner that is healthiest for them and sort of live their healthiest life, where they can take advantage of the appetite suppression that comes from this medication, where they can take advantage of the lowering of other health risk factors that take place in individuals or that occur in individuals who are obese or overweight. And the hope is that we will be able to slowly wean individuals off of the medication. So, when I start this medication for this indication, I typically spend time talking to patients and explaining to them what our approach will be so that they're in the right headspace.
So that goes back to your potato chips. So potato chips are still not great, even if you're taking the drug. Maybe you could now take it with less implications, but if you're trying to develop long-term habits, then maybe you want to kind of ease up on the potato chips.
Yeah, I'm actually curious on the diabetes side and this idea that if you're a type 2 diabetic, you would need to take this drug kind of forever. Can you help us understand, like, I imagine there's a correlation with obesity and type 2 diabetes, but with any correlation, there's other factors at play here. Can help us understand why type 2 diabetes itself would need this type of continued treatment?
Yeah, so type 2 diabetes, those patients, of course, their blood sugar is elevated, and this drug modulates the way that the blood sugar is sort of excreted through the body. It changes the way that the gut responds to blood sugar. And in the process, as Yael alluded to earlier, gastric emptying is slowed. I don't want to get into the science too much, but gastric emptying is slowed, and individuals experience early satiety. Most, not all individuals with type 2 diabetes are in fact overweight. And part of what happens is it changes the way that the body metabolizes food products. So I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but
no, I think that's fascinating, because if I understand you correctly, it's almost the appetite suppression is a byproduct of the primary thing you're trying to do, which is monitoring blood sugar level.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it.
So if you're not a type 2 diabetic and you're taking this, does it do anything to mess you up in terms of your blood sugar levels?
The doses have to be monitored carefully. We do sometimes see low blood sugars, hypoglycemia with these agents. But because of the way that the drug works, and because of the way that several other drugs that we use for type 2 diabetes work, we don't actually end up seeing low blood sugar as a consequence of the drug use. So typically at the doses that are used for GLP-1s, we feel pretty comfortable and safe that that's not going to be a major side effect.
So it is quite rare to find a drug that is developed for one purpose, has this other kind of benefit, we'll call it, and then that you can use that benefit on other people who don't suffer from the initial cause, right?
I mean, the famous one in kind of innovation circles is Preparation H, of all things, which I think was developed as a sunburn application, and then they found had other reduction properties. And I think I imagine there's other drugs that have had that there. In terms of the risks and the things that might result here, what are some of the other side effects that we might be need to be thinking about with these drugs?
Yeah. So again, Yael discussed this a little bit. It is gastrointestinal side effects. So nausea, upset stomach, sometimes issues in the lower bowel as well. Pancreatitis is something that we need to look out for with these individuals. The one that we're sort of having to be most reactive to, the symptoms that I just mentioned and the side effects that I just mentioned often result in patients having to discontinue the medication. The one that sort of individuals can be blind or sometimes ignorant to or unaware of is probably a better way to state it, is the muscle loss that Yael was referring to. And that's something that we worry about quite a bit, because people aren't necessarily actively thinking about their muscle. Like, particularly when it comes to weight loss, when the weight is truly just melting off, you're not thinking about what the long-term repercussions necessarily are. You're thinking about the fact that you were, a size 10 and now you're a size 6. And you're not thinking about what the implications might be for longevity and your lifespan and what this might mean as you get older. If you're 40 and you started taking these medications and you're suddenly fitting into a pair of jeans that you used to be able to wear 10, 15 years ago, you're not thinking about how you might not be able to put your suitcase in the overhead compartment in 10 years if you don't really pay attention to what's happening to your muscles.
It's interesting. I mean, I think that thinking about our muscles, even without the interference of these types of drugs, I mean, as you mentioned, I like to run. And the only reason that I do weights now is because I know that if I don't do my weights, I'm going to suffer with my running, right? Like, I think that maybe it's our generation, maybe not, maybe this will change as part of this disruption, but it's clear that folks focus on cardio for the sake of weight loss. And if you want to build your muscles like a bodybuilder, you do weightlifting, but otherwise nobody does weightlifting.
No, I think you're right. I feel like, both of us are similar age. We're both very active and work out quite a bit. And the message about weightlifting, basically, as important as you age, seems to be out there. I don't know. Is that just a trend, or is that an accurate thing we're hearing?
It is not at all a trend. It is very much something that we are becoming more and more aware of. Definitely in both men and women, but one area of interest for me is menopausal medicine. And we know that women who are perimenopausal and menopausal need to be very focused on weights. And as changes have been occurring on that's a separate podcast in that area in medicine as well, we're as physicians, we're being much more mindful of pushing individuals as they get older to really focus on kind of a little bit of a shift, as you both have alluded to, from the cardiovascular exercise side, which is still very important, to the maintenance of muscle side.
Well, with that, and this might stretch you beyond your medical expertise, because I want to get into maybe some of the societal implications of this. But to the extent that good body health, good eating, muscle mass, working out, like these are all important things. And clearly there are people who are obese who, reducing their weight is important. But as we were talking about, now there's celebrities and the like using this so they can go to the Met and look the best they can on the red carpet.
Sacha Baron Cohen used it to get fit for his next movie. So.
So are we creating a dynamic here where people are kind of taking away the wrong ideas about what is healthy? Is it, again, like we're thinking healthy now is skinny?
Yes.
But I thought we had spent the last 20, 25 years emphasizing there's a lot of different body types. And you can be very healthy and still be, a different body shape that maybe historically has been idolized.
Yeah.
I think you're right, because these drugs are expensive. And so that this also brings in another layer, which is, do you only get to be thin if you can afford to, if you don't necessarily meet the indications for this medication? So you're not a type 2 diabetic or an obese individual with certain comorbidities. So it is now getting approved more and more for individuals who are overweight or obese and have evidence of other end organ damage, like hypertension or high cholesterol or other comorbidities that might shorten their lifespan. So then if you fall into the category of individuals who, can log on to a telehealth platform and say, hey, I really want to lose this 10, 15 pounds. And frankly, I can afford to pay $1,000 a month to do that. Are we going to start to see sort of a societal divide in what individuals who are socioeconomically and financially more comfortable compared to individuals who aren't? And what does that mean and say about our society?
I love it. This is going right to like our favorite thing is to kind of make sci-fi references. Is it Gattaca movie like in the 90s?
Yeah,
it was
Ethan Hawke and
it was more based, I think, on genetic manipulation.
Sure
it had a similar theme that there are those who are able to afford the idealized body, and in their case, idealized mind as well, versus others. So,
well, I want to pick up on this because Sandhya, you mentioned the economic divide and the social kind of fairness or other implications that we may see play out. I want to just go back just a little bit to Mike's comment around, like, is this good, right? Like, is this a healthy? When we prescribe, when folks are getting these prescriptions via telehealth or their physician, like, are we changing our definition of what good is, right? We want them to be healthy. These are the habits that we knew were healthy habits. Now, is a healthy habit taking GLP-1 drugs, right? Like, is that okay to consider in the set of the tools in our toolkit that we should encourage people to utilize if they don't, for instance, want to run or they don't want to control their appetite by themselves? Does that make sense, my question?
Put it out there, this notion of, is this cheating, right? We have to define what cheating is, but you hear that, right? Like, is this cheating your way to a good figure?
Yeah, and I think that we're thinking about these agents as sort of being exclusively for weight loss, when in fact there are more and more studies being done showing that they are potentially longevity enhancing. There are, cardiovascular benefits, metabolic optimization, including improved insulin sensitivity, reduced visceral fat, lower inflammation, kidney protective benefits, cognitive impacts. There are studies now that have come out in the last year indicating that this may become one of the primary treatments for Alzheimer's disease, one of the newer generation GLP-1 agents. Studies around cancer risk modulation. There are certain cancers that are more prevalent in individuals with obesity and who are overweight, including mostly gastrointestinal cancers. And the weight loss and insulin modulation that comes from the use of these medications could actually decrease cancer risks.
That's amazing. Is that suggesting then if you are healthy and you're not obese or even overweight, that you should be seeking these drugs out?
Yeah, there's a place for that, right? And I don't know the answer in this moment, but the work is being done. I mean, the studies are coming out. There are studies being done suggesting that this might actually help temper addictive behaviors, including smoking cessation, alcoholism, gambling. So really far-reaching beyond what we've known about these drugs thus far.
That blows my mind. I mean, and I'm glad that you brought up the notion that folks are studying whether this relates to other addictive behaviors. Like we know that people consume food in what seems like an unhealthy manner, like drugs, like alcohol, like cigarettes and the like. And it would be fascinating to learn how we can couple the physiological aspect and maybe try to help folks control some of that.
So let me put a thesis out to both of you, and I'd be curious your reaction to this. As you know, from being on this podcast, I believe in science. I am definitely one who avails myself to modern medicine and the like. So take that as a preface to this. When it comes to my personal health, especially as it relates to things like working out and eating, my bias is towards natural. Right. There's and maybe one of the questions is, what does even natural mean? But I feel like if it has somehow to do with the type of food I eat and the activity as I engage in, that's good and natural. And taking a drug feels unnatural. So maybe disavow me of this.
Well, I think to some degree it depends who you are and how you grew up. And I mean, there might be different opinions here, but you almost have the prerogative to feel that way, right? Like, I think it depends on the circumstances. I think some folks will feel I got the lower, the bad draw when I was, in terms of my health, and I need somebody to help me because my health, I can't do it on my own. So I think that it's open to different perspectives depending on the people. Sandhya, what are some other things, like in terms of disruption? I think I know that you and I have chatted about, always for me is why now? Why didn't the GLP-1s kind of boom a decade ago when they were approved for diabetes, or actually 20 years ago when they were first approved for diabetes? What has happened in the world around us that we're seeing the change now?
Yeah, so I think that just for starters, the drugs are evolving. They're getting better, like most things do in science. So when the drugs were approved, when I first started prescribing this class of drugs, it was the injection itself was extremely painful. So even just the vehicle by which the drug is given has changed. They were given twice a day. They were not as long acting. They have since gone from twice a day to once a week. They had a significantly greater side effect profile. The earlier generations were associated with a 5 to 8% weight loss, which, if you think about it, for an individual who is, say, 200 pounds, 10 pounds is what you can get from working really hard. And if you have a painful injection that you take twice a day, you're not going to be that excited about it. And in that period of time, the newer drugs that Ozempic and Wegovy, which are actually the same drug, and the others like Mounjaro and Zepbound, which are the Eli Lilly's drug, those ones are associated with closer to an 18 to 25% weight loss. And now we're also, as I'm sure you all have read about and seen in the news, like we're likely going to have an oral preparation of this medication by the end of the year. And so why now is there are a number of other reasons, but just from a science perspective, because they're better and they do more, and people feel sort of more willing to use these drugs when there's a possibility of a 20% weight loss than they did, with a once a week injection, than they did when it was significantly less. And it was
So the efficacy has improved. Yeah, the efficacy has improved by a lot, which I can see, and that's where arguably we are talking about a disruption.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about the economics of this and how if we keep kind of modifying and changing it exactly and improving it along the way, I assume that's also giving longer patent protection, which means that the cheaper drugs are probably still a ways off.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit from what you know around some of when is this going to become generic? How much will that bring down the price? Will this still continue to be something that only the rich and famous can afford?
Yeah, so Ozempic's patent I believe, runs out this year. Yeah. And I actually spoke to somebody from the maker of Ozempic recently, and he said that they're likely going to be going direct to consumer by the end of the year. Wow. So it will change the way that the drugs are administered. There's a lot of industry that has that's being built around this class of drugs, that are, I sort of think of as being GLP-1 aware without being sort of necessarily GLP-1 driven. Just as an example, you mentioned that I do some work with Springbok Analytics, which is a company based right out of UVA, as a matter of fact. They developed technology that's going to allow us to measure the impact of this class of drugs on body composition in a way that we weren't even really thinking about 10 years ago. And so in some ways, we think of these medications and this class of drugs as being a treatment agnostic infrastructure that GLP-1s have made more urgent. So we've known that these things need to be done, including telehealth. So telehealth, I think, became a much bigger, started to be used quite a bit around the time of COVID. I became completely virtual in my practice in 2020. And companies are being built around this, Hims and Hers, just like the Ozempic ad. I don't know anybody who hasn't heard a Hims or Hers ad in the last few months or years. It's becoming much, much easier to get these drugs without paying $1,000 a month.
Wow.
To be clear, so what you're saying is it's not that they're direct to consumer, like I go into my CVS and buy it off the shelf. You still have to get a prescription, but it's the telemedicine piece that's making the barriers to prescription incredibly low.
Yes, significantly low. I don't know of any scenario yet where an individual would be able to walk into a pharmacy and just get these medications. There are too many downsides to that, in my opinion, right now. This is not Tylenol. But it is getting significantly easier where you can log on to one of these sites and make a case for why you would need it.
And you get it pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I would say this is a separate issue in the patenting, and just for our listeners' awareness. So I would think it's 17 years, I think, is a standard patent. But the drug development process is so long that this is not uncommon that a new drug comes to market and it only has a few years before it runs out of its patent. So that story happens over and over again. So not a shocker that Ozempic is maybe coming off patent already, even though it just seems to have been introduced, recently.
Well, maybe I'll ask a final question before we let you go. And thank you so much for your time. We are learning so much here today. But Mike and I mentioned a few industries like the fitness and exercise industry, the restaurant sector. What other industries do you imagine being disrupted from this? What are some other side effects in terms of the economic and a business perspective?
Yeah, I mean, insurance companies certainly, in terms of helping individuals get healthy without in the short term, rather than having to deal with the long-term implications of some of the illnesses. Telehealth, you said. I think fitness is a complicated one because I think that we're starting to see a greater focus around muscle health. There are gyms Equinox has an internal education program designed to support members using GLP-1s. The Weight Watchers that you alluded to, they filed for bankruptcy in May. I don't know that it happened that recently. Clinical research organizations are looking at drugs so new drugs are being made to counteract some of the side effects of the GLP-1s, where you could take a GLP-1 and then take another drug in addition that might counteract the muscle loss. It's a slippery slope. I mean, one of the beautiful things, in my opinion, that has come out of the development and the awareness around this medication and this class of medications is the stigma around weight loss, around obesity is less. We're really starting to recognize that this is a complex neurohormonal condition and not just a moral failure or a willpower failure for individuals. Just the fact that that a drug is in development and is being used that can help counteract some of the struggles that individuals have been having for years and help reverse long-term damage from long-standing obesity is really very it's truly incredible in my opinion.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your incredible knowledge on this. Dr. Sandhya Chhabra, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for coming here today to chat with us. Mike, do you feel more informed now?
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was so helpful. I feel incredibly more informed than I did coming in. So here we are.
Yes.
Our favorite part of
I know. So disruption first. Do you think it's a disruption? I mean, maybe you underestimated how much of a disruption it was initially?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, it's hard in something like this because I think from industry organization piece, which we often talk about, it's directly in the pharmaceutical industry. It's yet another thing that is kind of reshaping our health and the like. So I don't know if it fundamentally changes the pharmaceutical industry, but as we said, there are these spillover effects to other industries, which it seems like it's already having a significant effect. So I'll share, coming into this podcast, I have to say I was a skeptic. There's a couple things in the back of my mind. One, at that bias I already shared of like, is this cheating? It's better to be natural and go work out and eat better. And I think I've been disavowed of that. The other one, and to be maybe hyperbolic, I worried, like, is this the next OxyContin? The next drug that had a very specific use case, in this case, diabetes, and then gets prescribed to everybody and everything, and is this huge boon for the industry, but man, it had huge societal repercussions that were negative.
So you're worried about the side effects, that some of which we don't know quite yet.
Well, and I think that's the interesting question, right? The reason OxyContin obviously was so problematic was its addictive qualities and the path it led people down. It's interesting to think about things like steroids and why do athletes, are prevented from using steroids? Well, it's not because it's cheating, quote unquote, in the way we think about, what's fair and what's not fair. We typically ban them because of the side effects, right? We're protecting the athletes from themselves so they do not engage in behavior that puts their own health at risk.
Yep.
So if it's true that these new class of drugs don't really have significant side effects,
what a great outcome.
That changes the calculus in my mind quite a bit, that this is not an OxyContin situation at all. Is this, a miracle drug? I'm not going to answer yet. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I was skeptic. What tears, I'm skeptic for different reasons to yours. And, but I was, when we started researching this, kind of curious, I would say, because I feel like there's still a stigma, and maybe it comes from our perspective or things that we grew up on. And maybe within a few, half a
It's our Gen X.
Right. Our generation, it will change. So, the fact that people are using this, and some people are shouting at the rooftops, yes, I'm using it, it's all great, but others are maybe a bit more hesitant to share, kind of puts me in a pause. What is it that people are feeling when they're kind of embarrassed by it? I do think that this is much more disruptive than people realize. And I think ultimately, as we were called, in many different ways, our definition of good and bad and health will change as drugs and their efficacy goes up and the side effects go down. Because if we can create something that will deal with Alzheimer's, that will help people live longer, that will prevent maybe side effects of heart problems and so on, I can only see that as good.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to deny that there are therapeutic use cases, no matter what you think about, again, cheating and whether that are absolutely benefiting from this drug. So I think in that case, it's a good disruption, I think.
If it can have less waste in
Right.
restaurants.
Hard to argue against that. I think what I'm struggling with is, would I take this drug, right? And I'm not there yet. I'm not there. I've started to get convinced. Wait a minute. You're telling me, longer life expectancy, all of these other benefits. That starts to get intriguing, but I'm not there yet personally. So I'm going to give a good disruption, but a very qualified good disruption at this point. And again, I think the narrower uses for those health cases, unequivocally, this is a positive. The broader societal adoption, I'm not there yet.
Wow. I'm also on the good side in this case, and mostly because I do believe that if we can help so many individuals that we have not been able to help before in a way that seems like the side effects are controllable or mediated in some way, then I'm all for it. But time will tell. Next time you take your multivitamin in the morning, think what would it take to make that a GLP-1 for you?
Well, that's a great point. That's a great point. All right. Well, this is always a joy. As always, let me thank our producer, Gary, our lead researcher extraordinaire, Becky, and our other additional researcher who we just added to the team, Katie, who has been incredibly helpful, again, in making Yael and I look maybe a little bit smarter than we are, or at least have some knowledge of these topics that sometimes we come into and we don't. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Good Disruption is a podcast from the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. Good Disruption is a podcast from the University of Virginia Darden School of Business.
Darden.